All right, we're back. Uh, you know the story. No nets, no edits. We're just going to tape this. Got some questions I've got to answer. I've got it's kind of an interesting deal. I got a report handed to me this week. I'm not going to get too deep in it because I don't even know if it says it's now unclassified, but I'm not sure who can possess it, who cannot possess it. But I do want to alert all you motorcycle people out there about it. But we're going to start right now. My wife Beverly's going to read this week's questions. So what do you got, Bev?
Denise or Dennis Lemieux, do you still own a bike and ride?
Yes, I do. I've got a 2003 Ultra Classic with a sidecar. I think that's the last year they put the sidecars on them. I've been riding the whole time since '66. I have two hip replacements now, so I like the sidecar a little bit better. But at some point in time, I might build myself a little bar hopper, ride around town a little bit, not get out of you know out way out in the country. Beverly and I take off. We go on trips. Gone quite a few places in that sidecar. It's myself, Beverly, and of course our mighty dog. So look for us on the freeway. It's all black. You can't miss it. Next question.
Stick Manrich writes, was Dutch Schultz president of Dago?
Dutch was president of Dago for a very short tenure. And Crunch had stepped down as president and had passed over that office to Guy. And Guy was started out in Latuna, the same prison I went to in Texas. Then he came back to Terminal Island. That's where I wound up doing some time with him. But Guy really had control of that charter, but Dutch held the title while Guy was gone. But I don't know what happened to Dutch. He picked up a beef and had a couple of people rat on him. His tenure was fast and furious, if you will. All right, next one.
Tristan Judkins writes, what was it like to sit down with ATF agent Jay Dobbins, and were you conflicted?
Well, I was conflicted a little bit. I'll tell you, I didn't have a lot of interactions with Jay when I was in the club, and I don't mean any disrespect to Jay, but and you might find this statement odd. He almost seemed too together to me when I met him. I met him in Ventura on the 50th anniversary. It the celebration had started in San Bernardino, and then we moved it up to Ventura, kind of turned it into a world run. And I believe that's the first time I met him. I can tell you, I've got a vision of him standing on the corner across the street from the Ink House by the Starbucks coffee shop. And I looked at him and I just went, this guy looks like he's too together. He seemed very nervous to me. Uh, that was my first impression of him. But he seemed like he had his shit together. There was never a question about that. I like Jay. Jay, people, I've got in arguments with people about it. Jay was not a rat. Jay was a cop. Took an oath, went undercover, and came after us. But I will tell you, I was a little conflicted. I knew a lot about Jay, and I'll tell you how I knew about him is a radio station. They do these podcasts. I can't remember the name of the show, but they actually hired me to vet everything Jay had told them during the interview, and I wound up vetting it. And Jay had been honest with him, and that's one of the reasons I thought, well, you know what, I'll give him a shot and bring him on my show. Some people loved it. A lot of people talk shit to me, talk shit to Jay with the messaging, but Jay is on a different side of the fence than most of the people that tune into the show. Jay's a police officer, and he believes everything he says. He believes, and I just have a vast disagreement with him, and you could see how we're interacting with each other on the interview, and you know, he thinks the club's a criminal organization. My position has been and will be until anything changes. The club's a organization with criminals in it, not a criminal organization. So I don't know if that answered all your question, but yeah, I was a little conflicted. But Jay was a nice guy. He came into my home here, and respected me, respected my family, and I thought it was a great interview. I wouldn't mind talking to him again. Next one, Bill.
Canadian Nomad biker. Is brotherhood the greatest lie ever sold?
Well, that's a tough question. And when I came around the clubs in the mid '60s, it seemed there was genuine brotherhood there, and people interacting together and whatnot. Over the years, man, people got consumed with money, power, things that come along with that. I know you probably got that statement from Pee Wee's book. My brother Pee Wee was president of Vegas. He had some real hard feelings. How he left. I think I had a different perspective. I always had the perspective either you're in the club or you're out of the club. There's no in between. You can't remain friends with them. I've never seen anybody remain friends with Hell's Angels once they leave the club. I can't speak on other clubs, but and it got pretty down and dirty with Pee Wee. I remember Flash and I got in a big argument in the officers' meeting because he wanted me to defriend him. Pee Wee and I remained friends on social media, and I just thought I even brought her up in the meeting. I said, we're supposed to be the baddest outlaw motorcycle club on the earth, and we're in here talking about defriending somebody on Facebook. I go, what the fuck has this come to? And that was a few years before I quit. But is it the biggest lie ever? You know what? Jump on board and make that decision for yourself, because it's really hard to answer that question. There was a lot of brothers. I would think if David Ortega was still here, we'd be very close, probably arguing about things like we always did. But I don't know. I'm not going to answer that definitely one way or another. It's just I have mixed emotions about it.
Bronco says, talk about the orgies.
Well, Bronco, first of all, I don't want to talk about your mom. I don't think it's appropriate. And my next question is, how old are you? Because my first instinct is that you'll never be old enough for me to tell you about the orgies. Okay, move on.
Okay, tell us about Papa.
Papa. Well, I'm actually, I'm in the portion of the book. I'm at the end of the book I've been working on, and talking about Papa's death. And, Papa was a real stand-up guy. And I think what I'm going to do is, rather than get way off into it today, Papa was a stand-up guy. I love the guy. He left this planet in 2008. It was the circumstances were crazy, but I think I'll do a segment on Papa. So look for that coming up in the next few weeks, maybe a month from now or whatever. Let me get through this section in the book. It's very emotional and kind of tough on me writing about it. Is that it?
Tom Janzik writes, I tuned out right after you said wife.
You
didn't even complete the fucking sentence. What an asshole.
Well, Tom, that is the name, Tom?
Yeah, Tom Janzik.
I don't know what your problem is. Beverly just reads the questions to me. Of course, I usually, she doesn't voice her opinion, tries not to, but I think she voiced her opinion today by describing you as an asshole. But did you describe as an asshole?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you did. So I don't know, man. You're gonna tune out
on here and do this by himself.
Who? Him or me?
Him.
Listen, I don't know what your problem is. Beverly's just here reading the questions. If you have some sort of inferiority complex around women or whatever, that's something you're gonna have to work out. And if you're really interested in making an attempt to correct that problem with your personality, maybe I'll give you a referral to a doctor who specializes in that. Next one.
Albert Medell writes an episode on Hoover.
That would be a good episode, and I will do that in the future as well. But you know what you have to understand: if I do Hoover, probably going to have to do them in conjunction with Josh. You know, for every action, there's a reaction, and a lot of people felt that Hoover's situation was a reaction to Josh, and you know maybe I'll get into that. I think that's it for the questions. Thank you, Beverly.
No
Uh,
problem. I'm going
now
out with Tom.
I now I want to talk to you about this report I got my hands on. I got my hands on this report the last few days, and been going over it. And what I want to do is I want to back up, and I want to go back to the beginning of the outlaw bike movement. And everybody pretty much knows it, but you know there may be people out there. I wanted to segue into this declassified report that I just got. But the outlaw bike movement was birthed out of World War II. You know, people from the European and Pacific theaters came home, you know, running around Southern California. For me, other people, it could be back east or Florida, wherever, New York. And they started springing up these little bike clubs. And, you know, even back then, society and law enforcement had a dubious view of clubs as well as independent riders. I can tell you, I got pulled over maybe more when I was an independent rider than I did as a Hell's Angel. And what would happen is they'd pull you over and they'd go through this book they carried around. If you had the unfortunate experience to run into one of these guys that considered themselves a gang expert, they had this book they carried around, and they would try to identify what club you were in. And you know, back in those days, the thought was you didn't wear your patch all the time. You only wore it certain times when the club was functioning together. So I remember spending like 2 hours by the side of the road down there in near Malibu Canyon. This guy was looking for me with a picture with a jacket on. He thought that I would belong to one of the clubs, and he wasn't sure which one. And he went through this book and went through this book, tried to ID me. So that's some of the shit we used to go with. You know, this whole thing kind of happened at Hollister in 1947. You know, was it a run or was it a riot? You know, the San Francisco Chronicle made a big deal out of it, staged some pictures, sent it out over the AP wire, you know, embellished about what happened. And, you know, a lot of people say that was the birth of the one percenter. You know, the American Motorcycle Association claimed only 1% of the riders ruined it for everyone. And, you know, the Hells Angels, who weren't there at that time, they were the Pooh Bobs were there. But, you know, the 13 Rebels, the Galloping Goose, and whatnot were there. I knew a guy that was there. Tom Noel was a Galloping Goose. We called him the Old Goose. There's an article on him in Easy Rider magazine, if you can find it. He's, you know, sitting on his knucklehead. He was there. You know, I talked to him about it. He said it was just kind of a bunch of bullshit. You know, there was no riot. They were just up there partying and drinking. But you know what happened was kind of brought attention to the outlaw bike rider. And in 1965, Attorney General, who was Attorney General of California, released a report. The Lynch Report is what people referred to it as, and that report seemed to target the Hells Angels. And the report brought a lot of attention on the Hells Angels from being targeted. And the club was going through transitions. They basically said, we're going to put the Hells Angels and all these outlaw bike clubs out of business here in California. So they really started coming down on us. And our club was going through a transition at the time. Sonny was pushing for the bigger death head. And then we started thinking perhaps if we ran a California rocker and didn't isolate the area so much, it would be safer and harder for them to keep track. That's where I think this whole thing of documenting stuff started. I think, you know, I mentioned earlier getting stuck by the road in Malibu Canyon. I think that was a you know, aftermath of the Lynch Report. But I just came across this newly released document. It's been declassified, and it's extensive report, and it's close to 80, 90 pages, and it's page after page of former and active duty military personnel, and some of them are in the clubs, or in the major clubs, or in small clubs. Some of them are independents, and it explores the standards and the government policies of club members on active duty, in the reserves, on active duty. They target all the bases. They did a study. They targeted the bases around the United States, and then saw what motorcycle clubs were somehow, hiding in that particular area. There's a lot of speculation in it. They also say there's a lot of clubs that are actively targeting military personnel because of their training. Is that true? It could be true. As a former Marine, well, once a Marine, always a Marine, they say, but, I went to the DOD. I had a security clearance, and when they found out, I was leader of the Los Angeles Hells Angels, they, took my security clearance away. So, this report explores people with security clearances, what they're being exposed to, what they shouldn't be exposed to. The interesting thing is there's a short bio on everybody that they can identify as a former military, present military, or reservist. And they have a picture, and then they have like a short paragraph or a long paragraph, depending on how much information's on you out there, of what you're all about, what your training was. And, this is just a heads up for people. If you can get your hands on the report, I think it's worth a look. It's kind of interesting. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is this where we really want our country to go? Do we want to have a country that's that paranoid that they spend millions of dollars of now looking at the military personnel that are drifting out of the military and becoming outlaw bike members? So I don't know. I just, it kind of sits with me wrong. It's an interesting report. It's unclassified now, but it still may not be available to the public, or not supposed to be available to the public. I don't know. I received it, you know, through a job I'm doing as a consultant, for a legal company. But anyways, I don't know how you could get your hands on it. Maybe explore the internet, but it's worth a look. Okay, so that's it. Please, continue to support us. If you don't like the commercials, you can always go to Patreon. I hope that you'll subscribe and comment and like, and keep the comments coming. I like some of the obtuse ones as well as the positive ones. So I'm not going to talk about it. Well, I already did talk about somebody's mother this week. Anyways, all joking aside, I appreciate you guys coming here. I know this probably wasn't real exciting for a lot of you, but I think it's really important for everyone to understand that, they are seriously continuing to look at outlaw bike clubs. And, I'm hoping that someday they don't close everybody down. Anyways, I'm going to close with that. That's a pun on words, I guess. All right, talk to you later.